Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world of immense wealth and suffocating silence. We're going behind the gates of the great frontier mansions, past the armies of cowboys and regulators, into the quiet, velvet-lined rooms where the daughters of the land barons lived. We're going to explore one of the West's darkest and most hidden secrets, the devastating price of purity. This is the story of what happened when the kings of the frontier, obsessed with creating a dynasty, turned their families into isolated islands, and what the strange, sad consequences of inbreeding did to the women who were their most prized possessions. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy these quiet dives into the stranger corners of history. Your support makes this all possible. And, as always, please let me know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is. There's a special kind of magic in knowing we're all settling in for this journey together. Now, dim the lights. Let the noise of the 21st century fade. Take a slow, deep breath, and let's explore the tragic gilded cage of the cattle queen. Your world is not measured in acres, but in horizons. From the highest window of your father's house, you can see the land he owns unfurling in every direction. A vast, rolling sea of grass, dust, and sky. It is an empire built of cattle, barbed wire, and the quiet, ruthless erasure of other men's dreams. Your father is a king, and this is his kingdom. But you are not a princess in a fairy tale. You are a specimen in a carefully curated collection. Your life is a quiet, gilded, and profoundly lonely affair. The house, as everyone calls it, is a monument to a world that doesn't exist here. It is a 3-story stone monstrosity, shipped piece by piece from the east, with tall, narrow windows that look out on the prairie like the disapproving eyes of a stern governess. Inside, the air is cool and still, smelling of lemon oil, old leather, and a faint, medicinal scent you can never quite identify. The dust of the West is not allowed to enter here. It is beaten from the carpets, wiped from the furniture, and barred at the door. Your days are governed by a silent, rigid routine. You wake not to the sun, but to the soft footsteps of a servant opening your curtains. You dress not for comfort, but for display, in stiff, restrictive gowns of silk and lace that are completely unsuited for the climate. Your meals are served on fine china in a dining room, so large and empty that your own chewing sounds like an intrusion. You do not work, you do not play, you exist. You practice the piano, your lonely melodies echoing through the silent house. You read poetry from leather-bound books that have been chosen for you. You do needlepoint, your tiny, perfect stitches creating beautiful, lifeless images of flowers you have never seen. Your only companion is your governess, a pale, nervous woman from Boston who is just as trapped here as you are. She teaches you French, watercolor painting, and the complex, unspoken rules of a society that is 1,000 miles away. You are being groomed, polished, and prepared. For what, you are not entirely sure, but you know it has something to do with your name, your father's fortune, and the sacred, terrifying importance of your blood. Here's a peculiar fringe fact about the dynastic ambitions of the 19th century elite. The new money barons of the American West were deeply influenced by the old money aristocracies of Europe. They read about their dynasties, their titles, their carefully managed bloodlines. They were not just trying to get rich, they were trying to create a new American nobility, and they believed that blood was the foundation of legacy. Your father is a ghost in his own house. He is a man of ledgers and maps, his mind always on the business of his empire. He speaks to you at dinner, asking you about your studies, but his eyes are distant, calculating. He looks at you not with the warmth of a father, but with the cool appraisal of a man examining his most valuable asset. You are beautiful. You know this because you have been told so, in the same way you have been told that the earth is round or that God is in heaven. It is a fact, a part of your inventory. But your beauty is not a gift. It is a responsibility. It is a component of the Blackwood brand, another testament to the quality of your father's stock. You are not allowed to ride out on the range with the cowboys. The sun is too harsh, the dust too coarse, the men too rough. You are a hothouse flower, to be kept under glass, protected from the very world your father has conquered. Your isolation is absolute. You have no friends your own age. There are no other families of your station for 100 miles. The cowboys are your father's employees. The servants are your keepers. The townspeople are a distant, dirty rumour. Your world is the house, the walled garden, and the endless, empty horizon you can see from your window. And in this silence, in this gilded cage, you begin to notice the strangeness, the quiet, unspoken anxieties that seem to hang in the air like dust motes in the sun. You notice the way your mother, a fragile, beautiful woman who seems to be fading into the floral wallpaper, will sometimes stop mid-sentence, her eyes wide with a nameless fear. You notice the strange recurring illnesses that plague your family, the weak nerves, the bad blood, the profound, unshakable melancholy that seems to be a family trait. You do not have a name for this feeling yet, but you know, with the deep, intuitive certainty of a lonely child, that your family is guarding a secret that is kept locked away, behind the heavy oak doors, in the silent, velvet-lined rooms of your father's house. A secret about the price of purity, the cost of the kingdom, and the slow, creeping poison in your own blood. There is a long, dark hallway on the second floor of the house that you are not supposed to enter alone. It is not a rule that is spoken aloud, not a door that is ever locked. No one has ever forbidden you from walking its length, but it is understood, in the silent, coded language of your family, to be your father's domain. It is a place of reverence and shadow. It is the portrait gallery. Here, the history of the Blackwood family is displayed in heavy, ornate gold frames that seem to absorb what little light penetrates the tall, grim windows. In this hallowed space hang the faces of your ancestors, or, more accurately, the faces your father has chosen to represent his lineage. They are a severe and somber congregation, stern-faced men in dark, suffocating suits, their expressions locked in a state of perpetual disapproval, and their wives, pale, corseted women with sad, distant eyes, who seem to be gazing at something just beyond the frame, something you can never hope to see. They are the Blackwoods, a dynasty that, according to your father's booming pronouncements at the dinner table, stretches back in an unbroken line to the landed gentry of Old England, to estates with names like Thornfield and Blackwood Manor. You know from the hushed whispers of the servants as they polish the silver, their Irish accents a stark contrast to your father's clipped, affected speech, that this is a magnificent lie. Your father, the great patriarch, was born in a tenement in New York, the son of a penniless immigrant who died of consumption. He is a man who clawed his way to an empire of steel and railroads, and upon reaching the summit, he invented his own ancestry, just as he invented his own fortune. He commissioned a past to match the grandeur of his present, a fiction to paper over the humble, inconvenient truth. But the portraits are real enough. They are not fakes, they are fabrications. They were painted by famous, sought-after artists from the East, men like Sargent and Chase, hired at tremendous expense to give a face to your father's fiction. And as you walk down the silent, thickly carpeted hallway, the floral runner so faded it looks like a path through a dead garden, you feel their eyes. It's a trick of the light, of the artist's skill in capturing a lifelike gaze, but it feels like more. It feels like a silent, collective judgment. Their painted eyes follow you, and the air grows heavy and still. You come here when the house feels too vast and quiet, when your own loneliness becomes a physical weight pressing down on you. In the absence of a real family history, you come here to look for answers in the stoic, oil and canvas faces of your imaginary one. You trace the lineage your father has created, a story told in a sequence of solemn faces. You always start with your supposed great-grandfather, a man your father has named Thaddeus Blackwood. He possesses a severe, square jaw and eyes as cold and grey as a winter sea. He looks unnervingly like your father, or rather, your father has modelled his own stern bearing on this painting. In the portrait's gaze you see the same flinty ambition, the same ruthless desire for control that you see in your father when he dismisses a business rival or a disobedient servant. Then your great-grandmother, Annalise. The artist has rendered her exquisitely beautiful, draped in ivory lace, but there is a strange, unsettling fragility to her. Her smile is a thin, brittle line, a crack in fine porcelain that threatens to shatter. Her hands, long and delicate as they hold a single white rose, are almost translucent, the blue veins visible beneath the pale skin. She looks like a beautiful ghost, even in life. You move down the line, from one generation of fiction to the next, and slowly, as you spend more and more time in this silent company, you begin to notice a pattern. You first notice it as a quiet hum beneath the main melody, a strange recurring theme in the faces of the Blackwood women. It is in the eyes of your great-aunt Genevieve, which are just a little too wide set, giving her a startled, almost frightened look, as if she has just heard a door slam in an empty house. It is in the delicate, almost pointed chin of your grandmother, a feature that is repeated with uncanny precision in the portrait of her sister and her cousin, who hangs beside her. They look less like individuals and more like variations on a single, melancholy theme, and then you see it in the jawline. You first notice it in the men, where it is a mark of strength and resolution, a subtle but persistent heaviness in the lower face, a slight prognathism that hints at a faint underbite. The painters have tried to soften it, to disguise it with shadows and flattering three-quarter angles, but once you see it, it is unmistakably there. It is most prominent in the male portraits, a stamp of authority. But then you look closer at the women, and you see its echo in them too. A family trait, as recognizable and as inescapable as the slate-grey colour of their eyes. You remember a lesson with your governess, Mademoiselle Dubois. She was showing you a book on European history, and she pointed to a portrait of Charles II of Spain, the last of his royal line. You remember gasping at his face, at the grotesquely prominent jaw and slack lower lip. She had explained that this was the Habsburg jaw, a visible, hereditary marker of the Spanish Habsburg dynasty, a direct result of generations of political inbreeding. It was a sign of their royal status, and, paradoxically, of their genetic decline. Royal portrait painters, she'd explained, were often tasked with the delicate job of capturing a likeness while artistically minimizing these unfortunate family features. The memory, once a piece of morbid trivia, now returns to you in the silent hallway with a sickening, dawning relevance. With this new, terrible knowledge in your mind, you look at the portrait of your own mother, painted the year she married your father. She is breathtakingly beautiful, an English rose transplanted to the harsh American landscape. But if you look closely, past the radiance and the masterful brushwork, you can see the faint, familiar signs. The slight, almost imperceptible wideness of the eyes, the delicate, bird-like bone structure of her cheeks. And there, if you trace the line of her face, the faintest hint of that same stubborn jawline, a subtle heaviness that the artist has tried to conceal with a graceful tilt of her head. The pieces begin to fall into place, forming a picture far more disturbing than your father's invented history. You ask Mademoiselle Dubois one afternoon, feigning a casual curiosity as you practice your watercolours about your mother's family. The governess stiffens. Her posture, usually so relaxed, becomes rigid. Your mother was a Blackwood, of a different branch, of course, she says, her voice taking on a formal, rehearsed quality. She was your father's second cousin. It was considered a most suitable match, she adds, fussing with the collar of her dress. It kept the fortune, and the name, and the blood, all within the family. Purity of the line, you see. Purity of the line. The phrase hangs in the air of the schoolroom. That evening, you return to the gallery. But this time, you don't just look at your father's ancestors. You look at the portraits on the opposite wall, the ones belonging to your mother's side of the family, and you see it. The same eyes, the same chin, the same jaw. The two galleries are not separate dynasties meeting in a strategic union. They are mirrors. They are two branches of the same family tree, a tree whose limbs have been deliberately, methodically twisted back on themselves, intertwined and knotted together over generations to protect its assets. You are standing in the middle of a genetic echo chamber. You begin to understand. This is not just a collection of paintings celebrating a fictional past, it is a genetic map. It is the meticulously documented story of your family's obsession with itself, a testament to a pride so fierce it turned inward, feeding on itself. You look again at the women in the portraits, at their sad, beautiful, and slightly strange faces. They were not just wives. They are the prized broodmares of the Blackwood dynasty, chosen not for love but for the purity of their blood, their value measured by their ability to pass on the family name, the family fortune, and the family features. You think of the other whispers of the servants, the ones spoken late at night with a shiver, whispers of bad blood, of a familial melancholy, of the recurring, unexplained illnesses that seem to plague the women of your family like a curse. You walk to the portrait of your Aunt Eleanor, who died young of a wasting sickness. The painter has tried to make her look ethereal and romantic, a tragic heroine from a poem. But with your new eyes, you see past the artistic convention. You see the bluish, cyanotic tint to her skin around her lips. You see the unnatural thinness of her wrists and the sunken, shadowed hollows beneath her eyes. The artist painted a romance. You see a medical illustration. You move to the portrait of your cousin, Isabel, who is confined to a sanatorium back east for her nervous condition. The portrait is vibrant, modern, capturing her fiery red hair and startling beauty. But her eyes hold a wild, unfocused look, a raw terror that the painter has tried to pass off as artistic sensitivity or spiritual depth. You see the truth. It is the look of a trapped animal. The portrait is a beautiful cage built around a terrified and fragmenting mind. Finally, your slow, dread-filled walk brings you to the end of the hallway, to the empty space on the wall, a rectangle of darker velvet where the dust has not settled, where your own portrait will one day hang. The final link in the chain. You lift a hand, your fingers trembling slightly, and touch your own jaw. You study your own reflection in the dark, polished glass of an adjacent portrait. You look at your own hands. A cold, creeping fear begins to snake its way up your spine, a fear that has nothing to do with the ghosts of invented ancestors in their gilded frames. It is the far more intimate and chilling fear of recognition, the fear of seeing your own face, your own future, already hanging here in effigy in this silent, velvet-lined hallway. You understand now that you are not just a daughter of this family. You are a product of it, meticulously bred and curated, and you are beginning to comprehend the true cost of your family's pride. The price of purity is a strange and terrible inheritance, a flaw not of character but of chemistry, a poison passed down from generation to generation in the very blood that is supposed to be your greatest and most noble asset. Your life is a landscape of soft, beautiful and fragile things. Silk dresses, lace shawls, velvet curtains, porcelain dolls. But you learn from a young age that you are the most fragile thing in the house. You are not a robust, healthy child. You are prone to sudden, inexplicable illnesses, a cold that lingers for weeks, turning into a deep, rattling cough, a nosebleed that will not stop, staining your pillowcases a terrifying, bright red, a bruise that appears from a slight bump and blossoms into a dark, ugly purple that lasts for a month. The family doctor, a man named Dr. Albright, who makes the long journey from the nearest city twice a year, calls it constitutional delicacy. He says it is a common affliction among young ladies of good breeding. He says it is a sign of your refined, sensitive nature. He is lying. You know he is lying. He treats you with a strange and gentle solicitude. He checks your pulse. He listens to your breathing. He prescribes bed rest, beef broth, and a foul-tasting iron tonic that is supposed to strengthen your blood. Here's a grim medical fringe fact. Haemophilia, the royal disease that plagued the inbred monarchies of Europe, was a terrifying and poorly understood condition in the 19th century. Because it is a sex-linked genetic disorder, it is carried by females and primarily affects males. However, other inherited bleeding disorders can affect both sexes. In a family that practiced generations of inbreeding, the chances of such recessive genetic disorders appearing would be dramatically increased. Your father treats your illnesses with a kind of angry impatience. He sees your fragility as a flaw in his otherwise perfect dynastic plan, a flaw in the bloodline. He hires the best doctors. He orders the most expensive medicines from the East. He tries to fix you, to strengthen you, as if you are a piece of faulty machinery. Your mother, however, treats your sickness with a quiet, knowing terror. When you have a nosebleed, she holds you, her own face pale with fear, pressing a cold cloth to your face, her hands trembling. She knows this sickness. She has seen it before. She carries it in her own blood. You are not allowed to play with the rough-and-tumble children of the ranch hands. You are not allowed to ride a horse, except for a gentle, supervised walk on a placid old pony. You are not allowed to run, to jump, to engage in any activity that might lead to a bump, a scrape, a bruise. Your world shrinks to the soft, safe spaces of the house. The parlour, the library, your own silk-lined bedroom. You are a princess in a tower, but the dragon you are being guarded from is your own fragile body. You have siblings. Or you had them. You remember a brother, a small bright-eyed boy who died when he was 2. They said it was a summer fever. You remember a sister, a tiny, pale baby who lived for only a week. They said she was not meant for this world. Their portraits hang in a small, sad corner of the gallery. They are beautiful, angelic children, painted to look as if they are only sleeping. You learn, through the hushed whispers of the servants, that your mother has had other pregnancies too. Miscarriages, stillbirths. a litany of small, silent tragedies that are never spoken of in the light of day. The high rate of infant and child mortality was a fact of life in the 19th century for all classes. But in your family, it feels different. It feels like a curse, a weakness that is passed down from mother to daughter, from generation to generation, a sickness in the blood itself. You become an expert in your own fragility. You learn to move carefully, to avoid sharp corners, to live your life as if you are made of spun glass. You learn to recognize the signs of an impending illness, the metallic taste in your mouth before a nosebleed, the deep, aching weariness in your bones before a fever. Your illness also makes you an object of strange fascination and pity among the cowboys and their families. They see you as a mystical, almost otherworldly creature, the pale daughter of the land baron. They whisper that you are too good, too pure for this rough world. They do not understand that your purity is the source of your sickness. The good breeding, the pure bloodline that your father is so proud of, is the very thing that is trying to kill you. One summer, a new tutor arrives from the east. He is a young man, a student of the new science of biology. He is fascinated by the theories of a man named Gregor Mendel, who has been studying heredity in pea plants. He tries to explain it to you. He speaks of dominant and recessive traits, of how characteristics are passed down through generations. He draws charts in a notebook showing how a hidden trait can reappear in a family after being dormant for years. He does not know that he is describing your family. He does not know that he is explaining the secret that hangs in the silent hallways of your home. But you know. You look at his charts, at the predictable mathematical patterns of inheritance, and you see your own life, your own sickness, laid out in the cold, clear language of science. The tutor does not last long. Your father finds his notebook, sees the strange charts, and dismisses him immediately. He does not want the new science in his house. He does not want a rational explanation for the curse that haunts his bloodline. He prefers the mystery, the romance, the idea that his family's delicacy is a sign of its aristocratic refinement. But you have seen the truth, and it cannot be unseen. You look at your own pale hands, at the faint blue veins beneath your thin skin, and you understand that you are not just a daughter. You are an inheritance, a living, breathing embodiment of your family's most dangerous and most closely guarded secret. The sickness in your blood is not the only inheritance you receive. There is another, quieter malady that haunts the women of your family. It is a sickness of the mind, a fragility of the nerves, a deep, persistent, and often nameless sorrow. They call it melancholia, or hysteria, or female nervousness. Dr. Albright prescribes smelling salts, quiet rooms, and a complete avoidance of any intellectual or emotional stimulation. It is, he says, a natural consequence of the delicate female constitution. But you have seen its effects, and they are not delicate. You remember your Aunt Clara. She would visit for a month every summer. She was a beautiful, vivacious woman, with a quick laugh and a sharp wit, but sometimes a shadow would fall over her. She would become quiet, withdrawn, her eyes filled with a terror you could not understand. She would lock herself in her room for days, refusing to eat, refusing to speak. The servants would whisper that she was having one of her spells. When she emerged, she would be pale and thin, her laughter a little more brittle, her eyes a little more distant. One winter, she did not emerge. They said she died of a broken heart, though no one could say what had broken it. And then there is your cousin Eugenie. You have only met her once, when you were a child. Your family took a long, uncomfortable train journey back east to visit her. She lived in a large, silent house with her husband, a man who was also her first cousin. Eugenie was beautiful, with the same pale skin and wide eyes as so many of the Blackwood women. But she was strange. She would drift through the rooms like a ghost, her hands constantly twisting a silk handkerchief. She would start a sentence and forget it halfway through. Sometimes, she would just stand and stare at a wall for an hour, a faint, secret smile on her lips. Her husband treated her with a kind of weary, paternal indulgence. She was his beautiful, broken doll. Here's a disturbing fringe fact from medical history. In the 19th century, hysteria was a common diagnosis for a wide range of female ailments, from anxiety and depression to simple insubordination. The treatments were often as strange as the diagnosis, and included the rest cure, weeks of forced bed rest and isolation, hydrotherapy, and, in extreme cases, institutionalization in an asylum. For women in insular, high society families, a diagnosis of nervousness could be a convenient way to pathologize any behavior that deviated from the norm. Your own mother is a study in quiet, suppressed anxiety. She is terrified of everything. A thunderstorm will send her to her bed for a day. A piece of bad news in a letter will make her hands tremble for hours. She lives in a state of constant, low-level dread. She fusses over you, over your health, with an obsessive, suffocating attention. Her love is a blanket of fear. You realize that this mental fragility is as much a part of your inheritance as the weakness in your blood. Generations of marrying within the same small, isolated gene pool has not only concentrated the physical maladies, it has concentrated the psychological ones as well. The Blackwood mind, like the Blackwood body, is a delicate and often unstable instrument. You feel it in yourself. You have inherited your mother's anxiety. You startle at loud noises. You have nightmares. You are plagued by a persistent, nameless sadness that can descend on you without warning, leaving you feeling empty and hopeless for days on end. Your father, of course, has no patience for this. He sees any display of emotional weakness as a moral failing. He tells you to be stronger, to control yourself, to not give in to foolish female vapors. He believes that the mind is a matter of will, and that any sickness of the spirit can be conquered with a sufficient application of discipline. He does not understand that your sadness is not a choice. It is a chemical imbalance, a genetic echo, a ghost that has been passed down through your bloodline. The only place you find any solace is at the piano. The massive, black instrument is your confidant, your only friend. You play for hours, pouring all your fear, your loneliness, your unspoken sorrow into the music. You play the sad, complex and beautiful compositions of Chopin, a man who, like you, was plagued by sickness and melancholy. The music fills the empty, silent house. It is the only honest emotional expression that is allowed within these walls. One day, your father comes into the parlor while you are playing. He listens for a moment, his face a mask of stern disapproval. "That is enough of that morbid nonsense," he says. "It is not healthy for a young lady to dwell on such dark emotions. You will play something more cheerful, a waltz, perhaps." You stop playing. You look down at the black and white keys, and in that moment something inside you breaks. The carefully constructed facade of the quiet, obedient daughter cracks. You stand up, you look your father directly in the eye, and for the first time in your life you say, "No." His face darkens with a rage you have never seen before. He strides over to the piano. He does not strike you. He does something worse. He reaches inside the beautiful, complex instrument, and with a single, violent wrench, he tears out a handful of the strings. They snap with a sound like a wounded cry, a discordant, ugly jangle that echoes through the silent room. "There," he says, his voice a low, vicious growl. "Now it will be quiet." He turns and leaves you standing there, in the silence, beside the broken, unstrung piano. You look at the ruined instrument, its beautiful voice silenced, its heart torn out, and you see a reflection of yourself, of your family, of all the beautiful, fragile, and broken women who have lived and died in this house. You are not just a prisoner in a gilded cage. You are a prisoner in the cage of your own mind, a mind that has been shaped by generations of sorrow, a mind whose strings have been stretched to the breaking point. And you are terrified that one day you too will snap. You are 17. It is the age of possibility, of dreams, of a future that should be your own to choose. But you are a daughter of the Blackwood dynasty. Your future has been a business negotiation since the day you were born, and the negotiations are now complete. The announcement is made at a formal dinner. Your father stands at the head of the long polished table, a glass of wine in his hand. He speaks of alliances, of consolidating the great Western empires, of ensuring the purity and the strength of the bloodline. You are to be married. Your betrothed is not a stranger, a mysterious suitor from a distant land. He is your cousin Arthur, your first cousin, the son of your father's brother, who owns a vast, neighbouring ranch that is second in size only to your own. "It is a perfect match," your father explains. "The two great fortunes of the territory will be united. The bloodline will remain undiluted. The dynasty will be secured for another generation." He toasts to the future. You sit in silence, the food on your plate tasteless, the wine in your glass like poison. You look at your mother. She is staring at her own hands, her face a pale, impassive mask. She does not look at you. You know Arthur. He has visited the ranch a few times with his father. He is a quiet, awkward boy with the same pale skin and wide, anxious eyes as so many of your relatives. He has the familiar Blackwood jaw, more pronounced in him than in your own father. He is not cruel, he is not unkind, he is just a reflection, a slightly distorted mirror image of your own family's strange, sad legacy. He is also, you know from the whispers of the servants, not entirely well. He suffers from the same nervous condition as your cousin Eugenie, the same spells of deep, dark melancholy as your Aunt Clara. He is another fragile branch on the same twisted family tree. The courtship, if it can be called that, is a series of stiff, formal, and deeply uncomfortable events. He comes to dinner every Sunday for a month. You sit on opposite sides of the vast, empty dining room table, making polite, stilted conversation under the watchful, approving eye of your father. He brings you gifts, a book of poetry, a small, sad-looking brooch. He is trying. You know he is. But there is no spark, no connection. There is only a shared, unspoken understanding of your mutual doom. You are two specimens, brought together for a breeding experiment. Here's a disturbing fringe fact from the history of eugenics and dynastic breeding. The concept of like producing like was a powerful idea in the 19th century. Many wealthy families believed that by marrying close relatives, they were not only protecting their fortunes, but also concentrating the good qualities of their bloodline: intelligence, beauty, refinement. They had a poor understanding of genetics, and did not realize they were also concentrating the recessive genes for a host of physical and mental illnesses. The wedding is planned as the social event of the territory. Your father spares no expense. Your dress is made of silk and lace imported from France. The flowers are ordered from a greenhouse in San Francisco. A string quartet is hired to travel all the way from Denver. It is to be a celebration of power, of wealth, of the glorious future of the Blackwood dynasty. But for you, it feels like a funeral. You spend the weeks leading up to the wedding in a state of quiet, numb despair. You are fitted for your dress. You stand like a doll as the seamstresses pin and tuck the fabric around you. The dress is beautiful, a cascade of white silk and seed pearls, but it feels like a shroud. Your mother comes to your room one night. It is the week before the wedding. She sits on the edge of your bed. She does not speak for a long time. Then she takes your hand. Her hand is cold and trembling. "There are some things that a woman must endure," she whispers, her voice barely audible. "For the family, for the name, you must be strong." You look at her pale, frightened face, at the deep, dark sorrow in her eyes, and for the first time, you do not feel anger or resentment. You feel a profound, heartbreaking pity. She is not just your mother, she is your predecessor. She has walked this same path. She is a prisoner who has come to comfort a new inmate. "I am afraid," you whisper. "I know," she says, and a single, silent tear rolls down her cheek. It is the most honest conversation you have ever had. The day of the wedding arrives. It is a bright, cold, sunlit day. The house is filled with strangers, important-looking men, and their stiff, corseted wives. They are all here to witness the merger, to pay their respects to the dynasty. You are dressed. The veil is placed over your head. It is a beautiful antique lace, worn by your mother and her mother before her. It smells of dust and forgotten tears. You walk down the grand staircase, on the arm of your father. You move through the crowd of smiling, congratulatory faces. You feel like you are underwater, the sounds of the world muffled and distant. You stand at the makeshift altar in the ballroom, beside Arthur. He is pale and sweating in his formal suit. His hand, when he takes yours, is as cold as your own. The preacher's words drone on. You hear the phrases, "Holy matrimony," "In sickness and in health," "Till death do you part." They are just words, empty sounds that have no connection to the cold, hard reality of this transaction. You look out at the faces in the crowd. You see the pride in your father's eyes. You see the envy in the eyes of the other land barons. You see the pity in the eyes of the servants who line the walls. And then you see him, standing in the back of the room, near the door. Elias, the old cowboy. You did not know he would be here. He is not looking at you with pity or with awe. He is just looking at you. And in his steady, quiet gaze, you see a flicker of something you have not seen in anyone else's eyes. Understanding. He sees the cage. He sees the shroud. He knows. The preacher says, "You may kiss the bride." Arthur leans in. His lips are cold and dry. The kiss is a brief, clumsy and passionless sealing of a contract. The crowd applauds. The string quartet begins to play a cheerful waltz. The dynasty is secure. But as you turn to face your new life, you feel a profound and unshakable sense of dread. This is not a beginning. It is an ending. The wedding veil feels as heavy as a burial shroud. And you know, with a certainty that chills you to the bone, that you have just married into your own family's slow, sad, and inevitable decline. Your new home is a mirror of the one you left behind, a reflection captured in a colder, clearer glass. It is another grand, lonely mansion, perched on a hill overlooking a town you do not know, filled with silent rooms and the palpable ghosts of dynastic ambition. The furniture is new and expensive, the carpets are plush and unworn, but the oppressive silence is identical. Your husband, Arthur, is a kind man, in his own distant, fragile way. He has the same wide-set eyes as his mother, the same subtle heaviness in his jaw. He is not a monster, he is a product, just like you, but he is a stranger. You are two lonely children, brought together by a contract signed by your fathers, forced to play house in a vast, empty dollhouse, whose opulence only serves to magnify its emptiness. The first year of your marriage is a quiet, polite, and deeply lonely affair. You live your lives in parallel, your orbits occasionally intersecting at the long, polished expanse of the dining room table. You take your meals together in that cavernous room, the clinking of your silverware against the porcelain, the only sound punctuating the thick silence. You speak of the weather. You speak of the books you are reading, of ledgers and histories. You of poetry and novels. You inquire politely about his day at the bank he presides over. He asks politely about yours. You never speak of the fear that you both see reflected in each other's eyes. You never speak of the sadness, the crushing weight of your shared inheritance, the genetic flaw that is the true dowry you both brought to this union. And then, in the second spring of your marriage, you become pregnant. The news is received by your father and your father-in-law with a kind of triumphant proprietary pride that turns your stomach, an heir, the continuation of the line. The future of the dynasty is assured. Letters arrive, full of booming congratulations and unsolicited advice. Your father-in-law pats Arthur on the back with a vigour that seems out of place on his frail frame. They look at you, at your belly, not as a woman carrying a child, but as a prized asset that is finally beginning to yield its promised return. But for you, and for your mother, who visits with eyes full of a familiar, weary dread, the news is a source of a quiet, creeping terror. You know the history of the women in your family, a litany of sorrows whispered in shadowed rooms. You know the stories of the stillborn babies, the endless miscarriages, the children who were too fragile for this world, their lives measured in weeks or months. Your own body, the source of the patriarch's triumph, feels like a time bomb, a vessel carrying a precious, fatally flawed cargo. Your pregnancy is a delicate, nerve-wracking affair, a state of medical siege. You are confined to the house, treated like a piece of priceless, fragile porcelain. Your world shrinks to the silk-lined walls of your bedroom and the small, enclosed garden. A team of doctors and nurses, hired at great expense from the east, descends upon the house. Your diet is strictly controlled, a bland regimen of broths and tonics. Your every move is monitored. You are not allowed to walk too fast, to lift anything heavier than a book, to experience any form of emotional distress. Any sign of sadness is treated with soothing platitudes and sedatives. You feel less like an expectant mother and more like a crucial piece of laboratory equipment, a biological instrument whose only purpose is to produce a healthy male heir for the Blackwood Empire. Arthur visits you, his face etched with a nervous concern, but he is as much a prisoner of the process as you are, powerless against the dictates of the doctors and the expectations of his father. The birth is a long and difficult ordeal. It is not a miracle, but a medical procedure, staged in your own bedroom, which has been transformed into a sterile, white operating theatre. The room is filled with the hushed, anxious whispers of the doctors, the rustle of the nurses' starched uniforms, and the sickly sweet smell of chloroform that they press over your face. You drift in and out of a painful, disorienting haze. a passive participant in your own body's torment. You have a son. He is terrifyingly small, his skin pale and almost translucent, and he does not cry. There is no lusty, angry wail of a newborn greeting the world. He just lies in the nurse's arms, his breath a shallow, fluttering thing, like a trapped bird. They swaddle him in the finest linen and place him in a bassinet beside your bed. They name him Silas, after your father, a tribute that feels like a curse. The first few weeks of his life are a blur of whispered fear and desperate hope. He is a fragile, sickly baby. He refuses to eat, turning his head away from the wet nurse's breast, his tiny mouth clamped shut. He has trouble breathing, his little chest rattling with a terrifying effort. He cries with a weak, piteous, mewling sound that breaks your heart into 1,000 pieces. Here's a tragic fringe fact from the dark side of genetics, a truth you are living in your bones. The infant mortality rate among the children of first-cousin marriages is significantly higher than in the general population. The risk of congenital heart defects, respiratory failures, stillbirth, and death within the first year of life is dramatically increased. The purity that these families sought to preserve, the concentration of their own blood, was often a death sentence for their own children. You watch over Silas day and night, refusing to leave his side. You hold his tiny, perpetually cold hand in yours, willing your own strength into him. You sing him the sad, quiet lullabies that your own mother sang to you, your voice thick with unshed tears. You are filled with a fierce, protective love that is so powerful it is a physical pain, an ache in your chest that never subsides. You love him with the desperate intensity of a soldier defending a hopeless cause. But you know, in the deepest, most honest part of your soul, in the place where a mother's intuition lives, that you will not be able to keep him. He dies in the 6th week of his life. He dies in your arms, in the quiet, pre-dawn hours, as the first grey light filters through the nursery window. His breath, which had been a struggle all night, simply stops. One moment, the frail flutter was there. The next, there was only silence. A profound, absolute stillness that swallows the entire world. The grief is a physical thing, a crushing, invisible weight that presses the air from your lungs and empties the world of all colour, all sound, all meaning. It is a vast, grey emptiness. But in the House of Blackwood, there is no time for you to mourn. Your personal grief is an inconvenience, a sentimental disruption to the dynastic plan. A week after the small, private funeral, your father and husband speak to you in the library. Their voices are sombre, but their words are pragmatic. They speak of trying again. They speak of your duty. They speak, without a trace of irony, of the need for an heir to carry on Silas's name. The implication is clear, hanging in the air between them like cigar smoke. You have failed. You have produced a flawed product. You are a faulty vessel that must be put back into service immediately. You become pregnant again, and again. The pattern repeats itself with a cruel, predictable, soul-destroying rhythm. The next is a miscarriage in the 4th month, a secret, bloody loss that is cleaned up and never mentioned again. Then comes a daughter, Lillian, born with a hole in her heart, whose bluish skin and gasping breaths are a torment to behold. She lives for 3 days, 3 days in which you love her with a lifetime's worth of devotion before she too fades away. A year later, you birth another son, Thomas. He is born seemingly healthy, and for 6 months you allow a treacherous, fragile hope to take root in your heart. He smiles, he grows, and then he dies of a simple childhood fever, an illness that a stronger, more resilient child would have easily survived. His body simply lacked the resources to fight. The cradle in the nursery, the beautiful, hand-carved cherrywood cradle that was meant to hold the future of your dynasty, remains empty. It sits in the corner of the silent room, a pristine and polished monument to your failure. It becomes a silent, mocking symbol of the curse that runs in your blood, a beautiful, empty promise. The other women in the territory, the wives of the cowboys and the merchants and the homesteaders, look at you with a mixture of awe and pity as you pass in your carriage. You are the rich, beautiful lady in the big house on the hill. You have silk dresses and servants and everything a woman could supposedly desire. But they have what you cannot have. In the dusty streets of the town, you see them with their strong, healthy, squalling babies clutched to their hips. They have rosy-cheeked children who run barefoot in the dust, who fall down and scrape their knees and get up again, their bodies teeming with a vitality that seems miraculous to you. They survive. Your home becomes a house of sorrow, each room saturated with unspoken grief. You and Arthur drift further apart, two ghosts haunting the same sad, empty rooms, separated by a chasm of shared, unutterable loss. His melancholy, always present, deepens into a profound despair. He spends his days locked in the library, and you hear him late at night, the clinking of a brandy bottle against a glass his only companion. You spend your days in the nursery, sitting in a rocking chair, staring at the empty cradle, the silence of the room becoming your entire world. And it is here, in this room of loss, that you begin to understand the true nature of the curse that haunts your family. It is not just the sickness in your body or the sadness in your mind. It is this, the inability to create life that can endure, the slow, tragic, and inevitable extinction of a line that has become too pure, too fragile, too turned in on itself. Your father's ambition was to create a dynasty that would last for 1,000 years, a name that would echo through the ages. But his obsession with purity, his fanatical refusal to let new, stronger blood into the family, has ensured that his dynasty will die in a single generation. It will not be brought down by rivals or by market collapse. It will die here, in this quiet, sad room, with the profound and final silence of an empty cradle. And that, you realize with a cold, clear, and hollow certainty, is a form of justice that is as poetic as it is exquisitely cruel. The sorrow in the house is a living thing. It seeps into the velvet curtains. It clouds the reflection in the polished silver. It settles like a fine grey dust on every surface. The failure to produce a healthy heir has broken the spirit of the Blackwood dynasty, and in the wake of that breaking, the subtle madness that has always haunted the family begins to bloom in earnest. Your husband, Arthur, is the first to truly lose his way. His quiet melancholy curdles into a deep, unshakable paranoia. He becomes a shadow of his father-in-law, Silas, but without the iron will. He is convinced that his business rivals are plotting to ruin him, that his servants are spies, that his food is poison. He spends his days pacing the long, dark hallways, muttering to himself. He locks himself in the library for days on end, poring over the ledger books, searching for imaginary discrepancies, for evidence of a betrayal that exists only in his own mind. His conversations with you become strange, disjointed. He speaks of conspiracies, of hidden enemies. He looks at you with a new, unsettling suspicion, as if he is no longer sure who you are. "They sent you to watch me, didn't they?" he whispers one night, his eyes wide with a fear that is utterly, terrifyingly real to him. You try to soothe him, to reason with him, but logic is a foreign language to a mind that is at war with itself. He is drifting away from you, carried off on a tide of his own internal terrors. Then there is your mother. Her gentle anxiety has blossomed into a full-blown agoraphobia. She can no longer bear to leave the confines of the mansion. The vast, open spaces of the prairie, which she has never set foot in, have become a source of profound terror. She spends her days in her darkened bedroom, the curtains drawn, attended by a single, long-suffering maid. She has developed a host of strange, obsessive rituals. She will only eat from a certain plate. She arranges the furniture in her room in a precise, unchangeable pattern. Any deviation from her routine can send her into a state of panicked, weeping collapse. She is a prisoner in a cage of her own making, a beautiful, fragile doll that has finally, irrevocably, broken. Here's a disturbing fringe fact about the understanding of mental illness in the 19th century. There was a significant belief in hereditary taint. Mental illnesses like depression, schizophrenia, and bipolar disorder were believed to be passed down through families like physical traits. This created a profound sense of shame and secrecy around mental health issues, especially in prominent families who were obsessed with the purity of their bloodline. A mad relative was a skeleton to be hidden in the family closet at all costs. You feel the same darkness stirring in your own mind. The long years of grief, isolation, and quiet desperation have taken their toll. You have trouble sleeping. You are plagued by a persistent, low-level anxiety that has no name and no source. Sometimes, you find yourself just stopping. You will be in the middle of walking down a hallway or arranging flowers in a vase, and you will simply freeze, your mind a complete and utter blank. You will stand there for minutes, maybe longer, lost in a fog of unthought, until some small sound from the outside world pulls you back. You start to hear things, a whisper in an empty room, a faint, sad melody from the broken piano, the sound of a baby crying in the night. You know these things are not real, but they feel real. You are terrified that you are losing your mind, that you are succumbing to the same whispering sickness that has claimed your husband and your mother. You fight it with a desperate, silent ferocity. You create your own rigid routines. You read, you sew, you walk in the walled garden, focusing on the simple, tangible reality of the world around you. The feel of the soil, the texture of a leaf, the warmth of the sun on your skin. You are engaged in a quiet, lonely, and desperate battle for your own sanity. The cowboys and the servants watch this slow, sad unraveling from a distance. They do not understand the genetic complexities, but they understand the result. The Blackwood family, the great, powerful dynasty that ruled this valley, is rotting from the inside out. They speak of the mansion on the hill as a cursed place, a house of shadows and sorrow. They say it is haunted, not by ghosts in the traditional sense, but by the living ghosts of its inhabitants. One day, you find your husband in the portrait gallery. He is standing in front of the painting of your shared great-grandfather, the patriarch of the dynasty. He is talking to the portrait, his voice a low, intense whisper. He is arguing with it, pleading with it, his face a mask of tormented confusion. You do not interrupt him. You just back away slowly, your heart a cold, hard stone in your chest. You go to your own room and lock the door. You sit by the window and look out at the vast, empty prairie. It is a harsh, indifferent, and beautiful land. It is a land that does not care about bloodlines, or fortunes, or dynasties. It is a world of simple, brutal truths. And you realize that the greatest madness of all was your family's belief that they could conquer it, that they could impose their own strange, insular, and ultimately self-destructive world upon it. The wind howls around the stone corners of the mansion. It sounds like a voice, whispering a single, undeniable truth. The land endures. The dynasty does not. The madness was in the ambition itself. The empire dies not with a bang, but with a series of quiet, bureaucratic signatures. After your father's death, the creditors, the rivals, the patient, circling vultures who have been waiting for years, finally descend. Your husband, Arthur, is in no condition to fight them. He is a ghost in his own house, lost in the labyrinth of his own paranoid delusions. The great Blackwood fortune, which was built with such ruthless efficiency, is dismantled with an almost casual speed. The land is sold off, parcel by parcel. The vast herds are broken up and auctioned off. The regulators are dismissed, melting back into the landscape from which they came. The company town of Blackwood Springs withers, its artificial heart having ceased to beat. And you, and the other scattered, fragile heirs of the Blackwood dynasty, are left to face a world you are completely unprepared for. The wealth is not entirely gone. There are trust funds, properties back east, a tangled web of investments that even your father's rivals cannot completely unravel. You will not starve. But the kingdom is gone. The power is gone. The identity that has defined your entire life has been erased. Your husband is committed to a private asylum in New England, a place with quiet gardens and compassionate doctors who speak of his condition as a treatable nervous disorder. You know he will never leave. He has found a final, safe, and padded room to house his fears. Your mother lives out her days in the Boston house, a reclusive, black-veiled widow tended by servants, her world having shrunk to the four walls of her bedroom. And what of the other branches of the family? The cousins, the aunts, the uncles, the products of the same small, closed loop of genetics? You hear stories. Your cousin, Isabel, the one with the wild, frightened eyes, throws herself from the window of her sanatorium. Your uncle, a man who shared your father's ambition but lacked his iron will, drinks himself to death in a fancy New Orleans hotel. Another cousin, a man who inherited the family's bleeding sickness, dies from a fall from a horse, a minor injury that his body could not overcome. It is a slow, quiet, and relentless extinction. The great pure bloodline that was meant to create a new American aristocracy has instead created a generation of fragile, broken people, ill-equipped to survive in the very world their ancestors had so ruthlessly conquered. Here's a final, poignant fringe fact from the history of great American families. The concept of dynastic decline is a recurring theme. Families like the Vanderbilts or the Astors, who amassed incredible fortunes in the 19th century, often saw that wealth and influence dissipate within a few generations. The reasons were complex changing economic times, spendthrift heirs, but there was often a biological component as well. The very insularity that created the dynasty often contained the seeds of its own destruction. And what about you? You are one of the survivors. Perhaps because you inherited a slightly stronger constitution. Perhaps because you have a core of quiet, stubborn resilience that the others lacked. Perhaps it is just the dumb luck of the genetic draw. You do not stay in the East. That world of polite, suffocating society is not your home. You return to the West. You do not return to the stone mansion on the hill. It is a ruin now, a tourist curiosity, a place where people whisper stories about the mad, tragic family who once lived there. You buy a small, simple house in a quiet town, a town with no memory of the Blackwood name. You live a life of profound, deliberate obscurity. You read your books, you tend your garden. You watch the seasons change. You never marry again. You never have children. The Blackwood line, with its legacy of sorrow and sickness, will end with you. It is a quiet, conscious, and deeply personal decision. It is the final act of a rebellion that began the day your father tore the strings from your piano. Sometimes, a stranger will comment on your appearance. They will speak of your pale, delicate beauty, of the strange, aristocratic grace you possess. They mean it as a compliment. They do not know that they are speaking of your curse, of the visible mark of your family's strange, sad history. You just smile, a quiet, enigmatic smile, and say nothing. You have learned the power of silence. You become the town's eccentric, the quiet, well-read woman who keeps to herself. You are a mystery, and you are content with that. One day, you are looking through an old box of family papers, and you find a photograph. It is a portrait of your great-grandmother, the first of the Blackwood women to be brought to this wild, empty land. She is beautiful, and she is sad, and she has your eyes. You look at her face, and you feel a profound and overwhelming sense of connection, of empathy. You are not just her descendant, you are her continuation. You have carried her sorrow, her fragility, her unspoken fears. But you have done something she could not. You have survived. You have broken the cycle. You take the photograph, and you place it on your mantelpiece. Not as a monument to a fallen dynasty, but as a quiet tribute to a fellow survivor. A woman whose life, like your own, was a strange, sad, and ultimately courageous journey. As you drift now into sleep, let the grand stone house on the hill crumble into dust. Let the names of the kings and the queens fade into the prairie wind. Let the sorrow of the empty cradle be filled with a final, quiet peace. The empire is gone. The dynasty is dead. The bloodline has run its course. But you are still here. A woman alone, in a quiet house, under a vast western sky. You are the last of your kind. And in the silence of your own hard-won survival, you have finally found your freedom.